Showers of blessings, everyone. Welcome to Living Single and Satisfied. First, I would like to thank everyone who viewed our introduction video on yesterday. Thank you so much for taking the time to view the video. So today we're going to talk about part 1 of Living Single and Satisfied. So before I dive into the whole enjoying your single life and living your single life joyfully, I figured I should start from the beginning because not everyone is at the point where they are content being single, where they are ready to enjoy their single life. You know, I realize that you don't wake up after a relationship has ended. You don't wake up the next day and say, oh, I'm so happy I'm single. I'm content being single. I'm glad I'm single. No, it may happen overnight for some people, but for others, it's a process. You know, people are used to being in relationships. And once you're accustomed to spending time with someone that you love or someone that you've grown close to, you know, once you've grown accustomed to spending time with that person and their relationship ends, you know, it's an adjustment because you no longer have anyone to do things with. You no longer have someone to spend quality time with. So you have to adjust physically and emotionally to being single. So that's one reason I want to start from the beginning of living single and satisfied. I have my notes here so that I can stay on track and so I won't start babbling. So the first two definitions that's going to be very important, not only in part 1, but in all 5 parts of this lesson. The two important definitions are going to be 1, the definition of single, and then 2, the definition of satisfied. So I'm going to give you the definitions that I'm going to refer to throughout these 5 parts. Because single is consisting of one part, one in number, unmarried, lacking a partner, or relating to the unmarried state of being. Again, single, consisting of one part, unmarried, lacking a partner, or relating to the unmarried state of being. And then satisfied. Satisfied, filled with satisfaction, contentment, or happiness with one's situation in life. Again, my definition of satisfied, filled with satisfaction, contentment, or happiness with one's situation in life. So first I have a question. How do I know if I'm not satisfied? Now this is a question that you can ask yourself. Or how do I know if I am satisfied with being single? So one way you can know that you're satisfied, just like in general, one way that you can know that you're satisfied in a situation is that you no longer yearn or you no longer long for something. Think about when you eat. Once you eat your meal, if you are full, you don't want any more. You're content. You're satisfied with the amount of food that you have eaten. So you're happy with that. But if you haven't eaten enough, you have the desire or you long for more food. And so you don't feel full, so you desire more food. That's how you know that you're not satisfied when it comes to eating a meal. And just as being single, how do you know if you are satisfied being single or if you are not satisfied being single? How do you know if you're satisfied being single? When you will know that you're satisfied being single when you no longer constantly yearn for a mate or to be in a relationship. Now, I know everyone wants to be in a relationship, and that's understandable. But when being in a relationship or being married consumes your mind, and that's all you can think about, and every time you see a man or you see a woman, that the first thing that goes through your mind is, oh, we would look good together, or we will make a wonderful couple. You know, once you have constant thoughts like that, that's one indicator that you are not satisfied being single, because you're constantly longing to be with someone. You're constantly trying to be with someone. You're constantly longing for a mate or for a relationship. So that's one way to know whether or not you're satisfied being single. And then the second way is that you don't try to change your status, your single status. You don't just set out to change your single status or to get a mate. so you can be like others who have a mate. That's another problem that we see nowadays. You know, some people are not satisfied being single because they're looking at all of the other people around them who have relationships or who are in relationships. And so they think they have a relationship, so I need to be in a relationship, or I want to be in a relationship. So they purpose in their mind to find themselves a mate by any means necessary. And sometimes, and a lot of times, that's unhealthy. So, and that's another way to know that a person is not satisfied being single. So though that's a question that we all should ask ourselves. If you're not already at the point where you're satisfied with your single life, or you're content being single, ask yourself, am I satisfied? Am I really and truly satisfied being single? Do I constantly think about being in a relationship? Do I constantly talk about being in a relationship with someone or being married? That's an indicator. If you do, that's an indicator that you are not satisfied being single. So, and I know, like I said earlier, I know we all desire to be blessed with a mate in life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But we must first, very important people, first, we must be satisfied being single, because if not, it can cause a lot of problems to occur when we do get in a relationship. Now, what kind of problems will it occur? The whole clingy issue. If you are not satisfied being single, once you do get in a relationship with someone, once someone does show interest in you, you will find yourself clinging to that person, not wanting to let that person go, smothering that person, thinking, oh, I finally got somebody, so I need to hold on to them because I want to be in a relationship just that bad. And that's one thing that we're trying to avoid. That's one thing that I want everyone to avoid, you know, before they actually get into a relationship. You really have to be satisfied being single. And so the first point, that was my introduction. So the first point that we're going to really discuss today is the first thing that I had to do, that I learned to do throughout this entire process. The first thing I had to do was I had to accept being single. Now, this was a very hard thing to do because, like I said, you know, you've grown accustomed to being with someone. You've grown accustomed to being around someone and having someone to do things with and spend time with and talk to and text, you know, and just all the little lovey-dovey things that you do in a relationship. You've grown accustomed to that. But then that relationship ends. Now what? You have to adjust to being single again. And it's not only physically and emotionally, but first it has to be mentally. See, one of my favorite sayings is, it's a mind thing. You know, anything you can put your mind to, anything you think on, anything you set out to do in your mind, you can accomplish it. You have to tell yourself and accept the fact, okay, right now I am single. I am single again, whether it was voluntarily or involuntarily, I am single again. So first off, you have to accept being single. And thinking about that, the scripture that comes to mind is when Paul said, Philippians 4:11b, he says, for I have learned to accept, to whatever state that I'm in, to be content. And that scripture stuck in my mind, and I want to share it with you all because that's what we have to do. You have to learn to be content in your singleness, or when you're adjusting to being single again. And listen to what I said, for I have learned. Learning something is a process. It's not going to happen overnight. But once you purpose in your mind to accept the fact that, hey, I need to accept the fact that I'm single again, you can do it. And so when learning is like I said, it's a growing process. It may not happen overnight, but you can grow to the point where you learn to be content being single. Once you accept the fact that, hey, I am single, you know, there are some ways that you can constantly encourage yourself, you know, throughout this process. When you find yourself getting down, or when you find yourself, you know, wanting to mate again, or thinking about having a mate again, just think about, now this is what really helped me. Think about the fact that there are positive aspects and there are negative aspects to being in a relationship. especially probably the last relationship that you were in. So what are some of the negative aspects of being single? You know, the negative aspects of being single is that you possibly don't have anyone to go places with anymore. You possibly don't have anyone to spend time with anymore. And you may not have anyone to share the special holidays like Valentine's Day and Christmas with anymore. But those are just small factors. You know, once you really start accepting being single, you'll start thinking on the positive aspects of being single. And I'm going to give you just a few positive aspects of being single. One thing that really helped me grow in my process and to accept the fact that I was single is that I didn't have any drama to deal with. And we know, even though relationships require work, a lot of relationships that we have been in or been involved in, they contained a lot of drama. And so once you get out of that relationship, or once that relationship ends and you're trying to adjust being single again, one thing to keep reminding yourself about is that I don't have any drama to deal with anymore. And so when you don't have drama to deal with, it brings a peace upon your life. And so that's the first thing, no drama to deal with. Now, these are some positive aspects that you can think about when you're adjusting to being single and you find yourself thinking, hey, I want to be in a relationship again, but I really need to work on enjoying being single. Think about these things. 1, no drama to deal with. 2, you have an eased conscience. A lot of things that used to bother you about being in relationships, a lot of things you thought on negatively that were when you were in a relationship, you don't have to think about those things anymore. So your conscience is eased. You're more at peace with yourself. So that's a second thing that you can think about when you're adjusting to being single. And the third thing is, now I'm just going to keep it real. The third thing is you don't have to worry about anybody lying to you. Come on now, people. I know we've all been in relationships. Well, I'm not going to say all, but I believe the majority of us have been in relationships where someone lied to us. Oh, I was over here, but they were really over there. Or I was asleep, but they were really with someone else, at a certain place. Those were lies. But those are things you don't have to think about. Once you're adjusting to being single again, you don't have to worry about listening to lies or someone lying to you. And that's very important because we all want relationships that are truthful and honest. And so but when you're single, you don't have to worry about someone lying to you. And then you don't have to worry about if they're seeing someone else. Now, we know the ratio of men to women and how that whole thing is, but when you're single, you don't have to worry about, okay, do they have another? Am I the only one? Am I number 1? Am I number 2? Am I number 3? Those are things you don't have to worry about. And so once you constantly remind yourself of these things while you're adjusting to your single process, you'll be more peaceful. You'll have more peace within yourself about the situation. And then one thing that's very important, number 5, is that you don't have to worry about your reputation being destroyed or damaged. Now, this is another thing. Once relationships end, a lot of people try to talk about or ruin the reputation of the other person. They say a lot of damaging things about the person they were involved with, whether they were true or not. But when you're single, you don't have to worry about whether or not someone is damaging your reputation, or someone is speaking ill of you. These are just some of the positive aspects of being single. Some of the things that you can constantly remind yourself about, as you're trying to adjust to this process of being single. First step is very important, and that is accepting the fact that you're single. It's hard. A lot of people don't want to do it. They still want to be in a relationship. It's hard, accepting the fact that a relationship has ended, whether it was a long-term relationship or a short-term relationship. If you grew attached to that person emotionally, then whether that relationship lasted a long time or a short time, it's an adjustment once that relationship ends. So it's very important that once that relationship ends, you accept the fact that, hey, I'm single again, and I have to deal with it. And when I tell people that, a lot of people say, oh, that's easier said than done. I like to change that statement around. Instead of saying easier said than done, I like to say easier done than said. Once you start doing something, then you see results. So instead of saying easier said than done, I encourage you, if you're having a hard time adjusting to being single, or adjusting to getting over somebody, or just whatever it is that you're having a hard time doing, instead of saying easier said than done, when someone, gives you suggestions, start thinking easier done than said. Like I said earlier, it's a mind thing. Once you purpose in your mind to do something, then you can do it. So again, that is part 1 of living single and satisfied. Very important that the first step, they said admission is always the first step. So admit that you're single again. Admit that, I no longer have anyone in my life. And then accept the fact that you're single. And it starts mentally accept it, and then emotionally and physically start accepting the fact that you're single. And once you do that, you're well on your way to living single and satisfied. So I hope and I pray that you were blessed by this video, this part 1 of this video. Once all of these 5 parts were accomplished, then I was able to start actually living and enjoying my single life. And that's the purpose. That's the thing that I want everyone to start doing. Start enjoying your single life. Start, living, being satisfied, being single. And then once you are blessed with a mate, you're satisfied, they're satisfied, and that relationship won't be anything but positive overall. Again, I hope you enjoyed part 1 of living single and satisfied. Single, whether you're unmarried or without a mate, satisfied, being content, being happy with in your current state. Accept the fact that you're single. Accept the fact that you no longer have a mate, and then start the process of living single and satisfied. And encourage other people and let them know that you can live single and satisfied.